Hi, it's Grandma here, and I'm reading Snow Treasure, and I'm going to begin chapter 24. Now, Peter and Uncle Victor Anrolls have captured one of the German soldiers who says that he's Polish. He is the one that was on skis that Peter had seen. And he has now requested that Uncle Victor take him to America with him, which Uncle Victor thinks is an unlikely story. But let's see what he has to say. Chapter 24. Uncle Victor wanted to know how his prisoner came to be wearing a German army uniform, and this is the story the Polish boy told. My name is Jan Lasek. My home is in Krakow, near the German border. I was born the year of the armistice, 1918, when Poland declared her independence. Until last summer, I was a student of languages at the University of Krakow. Always I wanted to go to America where I could practice my English and study it further. But there were 6 in our family, and to spare the money was out of the question. My sister went to Pittsburgh to marry one of our countrymen. My grandmother was already living there. When grandmother died, she left me some money. The legacy was in a bank in Pittsburgh, and it was easier if I'd go there to get it. So I was to have a year of study in America after all. All last summer, when there were signs of trouble, my father would say, Jan, you go to America. But I had a job tutoring and was making money, and so I waited until just before the University of Pittsburgh would open. I waited too long. The last week in August, I went to Gdynia to take the boat for America. I had my ticket and my passport, but when I turned them in to go aboard, a strange thing happened. 2 men wearing police uniforms came up and took me by the shoulders. You're to come with us, they said. I had to go along. There was nothing else to do. But instead of taking me where someone would tell me what was wanted of me, they threw me into a dark basement, and there I stayed for 2 days and nights without so much as a crust of bread or a drop of water. It was because they'd forgotten me. In the meantime, the Germans crossed into Poland and bombed, I think, 23 cities. But this I learned later. Then I knew only what I could guess from what had troubled my father and from the sound of the bombs dropping all around. After 2 days, they remembered about me and brought me food and water. I inquired what had happened, and they told me the German and Poland were at war. I asked about my ticket and passport, and they only shrugged. The boat left on schedule, they said. Jan Lasek was aboard. Little by little, I began to understand. They had wanted my passport for someone else. So I was locked up, and the other is masquerading in the United States, doing I don't know what harm. The men who arrested me were not Polish, but German secret police in uniforms they brought with them from their own country. For in the house where I was kept prisoner, I saw every kind of uniform or costume you could imagine. There were disguises for clergymen, even the robes for a bishop. Men's formal dress included the ribbons and medals of a diplomat. For the women were all kinds of clothing, from the cap and apron of a parlor maid to the fur and jewels of a countess. One of the people in that house wore the black dress and inverted collar of a cleric. Here is one who will help me, I thought, before I knew about the disguises. This man of God will advise me in my troubles. One day when I had a chance, I spoke to him. I'm being kept here against my will. I said, will you help me get back to my own people? He laughed to put me to shame. So you think I make a convincing-looking clergyman, he said, but you flatter me. When next I saw him, he was wearing the uniform of the German Gestapo. And Gestapo stands for the secret police. But he did not hold my question against me. I thought he seemed to like me, for he spoke to me often, which was more than the rest of them did. One time I saw him packing a valise preparatory to going away, but first he had to unpack it. He took out the uniform of a streetcar conductor. This is what I wore when I first came to Poland 2 years ago. He held up the cap for me to read the letters on its insignia, and then he showed me the coat and trousers. From one of the pockets, he drew out a book of streetcar tickets. I learned more about Poland in 1 year of riding the Warsaw tram cars than most people know in a lifetime, and I found my knowledge very useful. I asked him why so many different kinds of dress were found in one house. But it's wise to have many changes of dress. Come, I'll show you. He opened a large wardrobe, and from it he drew out a suit of Scotch tweed. Plaid cap, rough shoes, and a heavy blackthorn stick went with it. Then he began practicing his Scottish dialect. The dress of a Scotsman was vera helpful to me, he mocked. It got me into the British Embassy, and there I drew more than one piece of information out of the servants, information that was gratefully received at home. Who wears the nurses' uniforms? I asked. Who would wear them but our women agents? They get employment in an influential family where they can learn much that our country wishes to know. So what does it matter if the employer or the maid furnishes the uniform? It's only a few marks one way or the other. One of our girls was able to bring us information about a deposit of ammunition our other agents didn't know existed. It's been blown up, he finished. Spies, I said, entirely without regard of what he would do to me. But it didn't make him angry. He only shrugged his shoulders. Call us that if you like. We describe ourselves as patriots. Patriots? Yes, you can call yourselves that if you mean coming into a peaceful country and getting control of it by lies, sneakiness, bribery, and corruption. Oh, but that's the highest form of patriotic duty to one's own country, he said. And I'll say this much for him. He was speaking the truth as he knew it. One of these disguises was given to me. It was the uniform of a German army private. I had to put it on, or I'd be shot. But what do you want of me? I asked the woman who kept that house. Our Führer needs your passport for work of his own in America, she said. But why must I wear a German uniform? I asked. Well, you ought to be glad to wear it. You might have been left to die in the basement. Why do I owe my life to this uniform? You were locked in. Nobody meant you should die of starvation, but you were forgotten about. We've more important things to think about than one Pole. But we needed someone who knew languages, not one or two, but many foreign languages. Your papers say you are a student of languages, so you will be an interpreter for the army. Never, I said. My country's at war with Germany, and I'll do nothing to help an enemy. Oh, don't worry, she said. In a short time, there'll be no war. Poland will have surrendered. One day I was taken out of that house, and with a body of German guardsmen I was put on a train and sent south to my own city of Krakow. I was in Krakow for months after that. You can imagine my shame when one of the few old neighbors that were left saw me in a Nazi uniform. My father was dead. He was shot when he went to the assistance of an old priest who was dragged off the altar at Mass. My mother was not there. They said she got to Romania and took my little brother and sister. 2 of my brothers died defending our city. My home I saw. There are hardly 2 bricks standing on top of each other. I make no mention of the humiliation of our people, or how the Germans stole our money, our homes, our farms, and the very potatoes in our fields. I say nothing of what they did to our priests, or of how they took our young men and made them work at hard labor for themselves, nor of how they turned the women and children out of their houses overnight and sold those houses to people in Germany. All these things I saw with my own eyes. Me, they treated with civility. Always I've had enough to eat and a bed. I translate orders from the officers into whatever language is needed for posting to the civilian population. Polish there, Norwegian here. If I refused, they'd shoot me, and all the while I'm hoping to live for Poland. Norway has seen little. It's Poland that has suffered. Here you think the Germans are decent, and they have behaved better in your country than in mine. Perhaps it is because they think of Norway as a part of Germany, so they have not yet taken all your food and left you to starve. Poland they used as an example. It was to show what would happen if you did not submit. Now you know why I'm not spying on you to tell the Germans and win a promotion. You know why I've watched your children, because if you belong to a country that has been invaded, as mine has, then you are drawn in sympathy to people who have similarly suffered. You know now why I must get to America. Chapter 25. Well, what are we going to do with him? Uncle Victor asked when Jan Lasik had finished his story. They'd put him in the hold while they discussed the problem. Well, we daren't turn him loose, that's certain, Rawls replied. We can't take the risk that he won't tell the commandant. He'd never do that, Peter spoke quickly. His story sounds true enough, Uncle Victor decided. I can well believe what he's told us. We know about the disguises ourselves, about men who came to Norway dressed as sports lovers, but who turned out to be the secret police. But I think it's dangerous to let him go. Whether he meant to or not, he could accidentally say something that would put the Germans on our trail. But what shall we do with him? Well, he'll have to be kept in the hold. We can't stand guard over him. I have a crew coming on tomorrow, but even so, I cannot spare a man just to watch him. Rolls was laying the table for supper. Since it was so late, Peter was to spend the night aboard the Kling, and there was no place on earth he would rather be. His mother would not miss him that night, for he was supposed to be at the Holmes farm. Couldn't you take him with you to America, Uncle Victor? Peter pleaded. It seems a shame he can't go. But I can't take him without a passport. That's all there is to it, his uncle said shortly. It would be a terrible thing to go that distance and be turned back at the end, Rawls explained. I could sign him on as a sailor, Uncle Victor answered, but he'd be interned because I'm not planning to return. I'm afraid that would be pretty hard on him after all he's gone through. You could land him somewhere along the coast where the fighting is going on, Rawls suggested. There are Poles with the British Army. Too dangerous, the captain replied. Once I get out of this fjord, I'm going to stay out to sea. Overnight, the Germans have been capturing our towns. I might run into an enemy occupation. Once I get past, I'm going to stay past. The Polish boy had been frightened when they told him they would have to lock him up for the night. Nothing will harm you, Uncle Victor said. You won't have to go back to the barracks. We're hiding, and you can hide with us. They had to wait for the long twilight to fade to bring in the gold that the children had buried that day. They didn't dare carry a light. You see now why I had you build the snowmen? Uncle Victor asked Peter. We just have to feel our way, so all we do is feel for a snowman, and under him is the gold. With 3 of them at work, it wasn't long before they had the bullion aboard the Kling. 51 bricks, Rawls grunted in satisfaction, and each brick is worth 5,000 United States dollars. Uncle Victor spoke cheerfully. That's $255,000 we collected from these snowmen, and quite a lot of money. Uncle Victor, that's just about all the gold in the cave. One day more will bring it all out. This morning I asked Per Garson how much was left, and he said 100 bricks. Well, here are 51 of them right now. That's what I'd been hoping. As soon as this Polish boy is missed, the Germans will start searching for him. They may come here. Even with the camouflage, it's dangerous if they get too close. If I had my crew, I think I would sail tonight. Although I'd have to leave the rest of the gold, I'd do it to be safe. But before he turned in that night, Rawls quizzed Jan Lasik about when he would be missed at the camp. Jan said he might be missed that night, but they couldn't help noting his absence at roll call in the morning. When Rawls told his chief, Peter thought his uncle looked solemn. Then the search may start tonight. He went to the porthole to look through a slit in the fir branches. You don't expect them here already? Peter asked. No, I want to see if there's any sign of my sailors. They'll come at night. But the curfew, Uncle Victor, oh, it'd be a lot safer for them at night. But don't worry. Hans Torp and Sten and Dino are resourceful fellows. They'll manage. I told them to be here no later than tomorrow, and they'll be here. There were voices out of the night beyond the portholes. From the direction of the beach came calls. Crowded at the peepholes and the fir branches, the three in the cabin waited. The voices grew louder. Outside in the snow were several squads of Germans. So the search has started, Victor spoke softly, and they're even looking here. Whew, what a narrow squeak. If they'd come an hour earlier, they would have found us out there with the gold. Well, that was a lucky break, wasn't it? But what are they going to do? His crew isn't there. They haven't finished bringing the gold. They've got the Polish man aboard, and the Germans are searching for them. I don't know. Well, we'll have to wait and see. Bye-bye.